Hey guys, Tightrope here. I was away this weekend, so I'm a bit late getting to this, but let's take a look at the Emerald Bear Balance Tuning Patch 1.2.3. They do also mention here that there is going to be a PC roadmap coming out shortly, which is going to have more information about future updates, so looking forward to seeing that. But in the meantime, the changes, we've got unit selection. They've changed the priority of infantry, vehicles, weapons, supply crates, and sectors to ensure controlling and selecting things in game feels better. So prior to this patch, one of the big issues was trying to say like right click an enemy vehicle that was being repaired, something like this, Africa Corps half track being repaired by infantry. But now if I right click around, you can see quite easy to select the transport. But if I right click on the infantry, it selects the transport. I have to come down to the infantry's feet away from the transport to be able to select the infantry. So, I don't know, you know, they're adding a lot of these kind of like tricks to make it easier to select things, but then, you know, like by me clicking on what I intend to click on, I'm not actually getting that result. You know, I'm trying to right click on infantry, but it's selecting the transport. So it's at the game systems at the moment with these kind of changes are trying to correct my mistakes, but what happens if they're not a mistake, you know? Now I'm getting an input that I don't really didn't intend to do, and that can be devastating in the heat of battle. So yeah, personally for me at the moment, all these kind of selection changes, well, specifically around these kind of like prioritization, you know, making it easier to pick up weapons from the ground, I'm on board with that. But these specific ones where things are on top of each other and it's using some kind of logic to decide what you want to click on rather than what you actually clicked on. These kind of changes at the moment for me are quite frustrating, and I don't know, I don't really like them that much. You know, even me, you know, like my input accuracy is quite bad, but I feel like I can just click on whatever I want to click on, and I want that to be the result. I don't mind using attack move here and there to stop an error in my inputs or minimize the risk or downside of an input mistake personally. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of these changes. Faction balance general 3-inch mortar team. This is the British one. Shells per barrage increased from 4 to 6, and shells per HE barrage with the saturation activated from Indian artillery, that's going from 7 to 8. I think, yeah, the British stock mortar woefully underperforming compared to all the rest of them, largely because its barrage is so weak. So increased to more parity with other mortars. I think the US mortar still does one more shell than that. I think it does 7 shells per barrage. But, you know, now at least the Brit mortar is not a complete joke, which is important because, you know, machine guns are so strong at the moment. You need a mortar to be able to counter them. Aircraft, strafe plane health reduced from 280 to 240, which doesn't seem like much, but I believe the 88 flak does 240 damage per shot. So it should be able to one-shot these now, which could mean you could actually shoot them down before they even unload their damage. And then the high altitude bomber plane increased from 280 to 480. So yeah, it'll take 2 shots from the 88 to shoot this down, make it a lot harder to shoot down the high altitude bombers, offering a bit of separation between these aircraft. So let's see if these strafes can get shot down in time. We're going to be using the P-47 strafing runs from Special Operations. And we've got 88 here in the center of the map. Going to be targeting this Panzer Grenadier. So this, you know, maybe roughly the situation you'd arrive at in game. 88, I could believe this as a position, and same story with the squad being here. So let's see if it'll get shot down before or not. Missed his shot. And try that again.
P-47 ready to ruin Jerry's day. Straight for target, dead ahead. Bingo fuel in, heading back to base.
It definitely looked like that connected. We saw it like on our screen specifically. Well, let's try it with the air support center planes, see if they're different. Maybe these ones didn't get the same health change.
SOP boys, straight that target. Bingo fuel here. Heading back to
Am I wrong about this doing 240 damage? No, there it is. 240 damage for the 88 for Africa Corps. Interesting. I don't know why these planes are not getting shot down then. It seems like we've seen like 3 direct connections and the plane hasn't been shot down yet. Let's try it out with now the Flak 36 anti-air emplacement, the Wehrmacht one, see if that has more success. Maybe it's just an Africa Corps thing.
99 fighters here. Bail out, bail out!
Bail out, bail out. Okay, this one worked. But the Africa Corps one didn't. Strange. Let's just try a couple more. Alright, back on the Africa Corps 88.
B-47 ready to ruin Jerry's day.
Okay, the second shot it got it on. The second shot. It said going down after the first shot. Is there something going on with the Africa Corps 88?
99 fighters here. Straight to target. Dead ahead.
Is this not doing full 240 damage to planes or something?
Bingo fuel here. Heading back to base.
Something funky going on here with the Africa Corps 88. Well, let's try some other forms of anti-air. Now I've got the Flak 38 anti-air emplacement from
B-47
Wehrmacht.
ready to
Let's see if
ruin
this can
Jerry's
shoot
day.
down time.
Going down. Save the cat.
Close, no cigar. Let's try that once more, see if it was just a fluke.
99 fighters here.
This one seems just about to be able to shoot down before it unloads its payload, but not quite. Interesting. Alright, now I've got the quad. Same test. Let's see how it goes.
99 fighters here.
Gets it like it's already passed, so yeah, definitely no chance on the quad. See how the Flak feeling goes in terms of anti-air against the strafe.
B-47 ready to ruin Jerry's. Bingo fuel here. Heading back
Worst
to base.
performance, yes, yet even worse than the quad. Seemed like maybe it had a bit of more of a tracking issue, losing its tracking when the plane was like right on top of it, having trouble swiveling around. But yeah, not good signs for the Flak feeling in terms of shooting down strafes. Does give a lot of veterancy though. And now the Polsten truck. Let's see if that can shoot these down.
B-47 ready to ruin Jerry's. Going down. Save the cat.
Okay, just afterwards. So pretty similar to the Flak emplacement of Wehrmacht. Better than the quad. So unlikely, you know, unless you've got a Flak 36 or the 88 emplacement from Wehrmacht at the moment. Doesn't seem like you'll be able to shoot down the strafes before they unload their payload. So, but maybe if you've got multiple forms of anti-air, you know, if you're playing like a team game, you've got loads of anti-air, you should probably be able to shoot down these strafes before they offload what they're going to do. So that's interesting. Anti-air, the Whirlwind, quad and Flak feeling are getting a range bonus, going up from 6 times bonus range against aircraft to 7.5 times. So you'll be able to shoot at those planes from further away. Probably pretty good for those big 4v4 maps. Here we are on the winter line, one of those big 4v4 maps. Got a Flak in the corner. I'm going to do a loiter in the center. Let's see if it's in range.
Loiter in the target. They won't get away from me.
Yep. Easy. Okay, now I'm going to do a loiter down on the bottom side.
Circle in the area.
See if it can range now. Drive it forwards. No, it can range it. From the far side of the map. So yeah, that's a lot of range on these anti-air units. You're not going to have to drive them in close. Autocannons, the 8-Rad, 250/9 and the Crusader anti-air. These guys had a bugged rate of fire way too fast. And now it's been reduced by 0.125 seconds back to pre 1.20 status. Bit of a shame that this was, you know, active during the recent Master League tournament. I think it kind of did spoil the results of that a little bit, like spoil the strategies, but you know, whatever, that's what we had. So let's check out the 8-rad with its new rate of fire. Remember, it did get nerfed in 1.2.0, but then because of all the autocannon bugs, it had super high rate of fire, so it's going to be weaker than it was initially. Let's see TTK wise how it still goes. Okay. Still pretty respectable. So it's still better than the Humber, while being significantly more durable. Oops, this one was in range of that still. Pretty similar across the board there though in terms of TTK. Yeah, it still seems pretty good. Not absolutely bonkers though. Yeah, roughly where it needs to be, I would say. The Bishop self-propelled gun. Barrage projectiles now ignore collisions up to 75% during its flight due to the Bishop's low angle of fire, and now fires low angle shells to match the maximum elevation of its weapon. So it seems like they wanted to kind of match up the animations of the gun itself and the projectiles, and then to make it so it wasn't constantly colliding into stuff. I guess this means for the first 75% of the arc of the projectile, it won't collide into things like buildings or trees. Only during that last 25% when it's coming down will it be able to collide with stuff. So it's an interesting change just to try and match up the animations a bit. Let's have a look at these Bishop changes. I'm going to barrage over here. Buildings in the way. And it just goes straight through. But the projectile does indeed line up with how the barrel is facing. Doesn't like kind of soaring up from the barrel, so it's nice in terms of animations. We'll try that on the swing back now. Oh, that goes straight through. Okay, that time it didn't. Maybe it was off to the side actually. Okay, yeah, it's just off to the side. It's quite a lot of scatter. So yeah, I think I barraged around here. And it's when it's on the descent, it can collide with these structures, as you would expect. I wonder if this makes the shell travel a bit faster as well, now that it's like a lower angle shell. Maybe it hits the enemy target a bit faster. So we're going to have a bit of a race here. We've got the Wepse and the Bishop right next to each other. Let's see what projectile-wise, speed-wise, which one's faster. Yeah, way faster on the Bishop with that low angle. You can see it. Not way faster, but noticeably faster. So less delay. Might be better for like shotgun attacks, the Bishop, with how fast the shell lands. Because the Wepse did get a buff this patch as well, like in terms of the delay between it, you targeting the barrage and actually firing. So it's an interesting result. The CMP anti-air truck is getting a lot of changes. First off, its accuracy has been reduced by a significant amount. And it's getting a flat 5.675 damage area of effect damage. So just whole circle will be 5.675 damage, which is not a lot. Depends on its rate of fire, I suppose. Then its area of effect damage is also capped to just 2 models. Its horizontal traverse speed, this is I guess how fast the weapon spins around, has been reduced as well. Reload time has been increased. Scatter has been greatly reduced, heavily reduced scatter. So I suppose you're losing some on accuracy, gaining some on scatter. So probably even out against infantry. And I think these values will be fun enough to hit pretty much any vehicle anyway. So I don't think this really matters in the end too much. And yeah, again, scatter reduced. And then weapon cooldown reduced. So yeah, hard to evaluate these. We'll have to look at them in game. Let's check out this new Polsten, first up against a Grenadier squad out in the open. Let's see how they go compared to the 8-rad that we saw earlier. Okay, so they have to rotate around a bit first. They can fire. Worse than the 8-rad for sure. This is up against lower health models as well, 80 health instead of, is it 100 on the rifleman? The CMP does have 8 armor every direction, so it doesn't really matter that you're getting hit from which side in terms of small arms. It's not like some other vehicles which would have lower armor on the rear, but you still have to back them into combat. This has the same armor every direction. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely quite a bit worse than the 8-rad. Maybe like the cannons are kind of similar, but then the 8-rad has the machine gun to put it over the top. And now up against some Grenadiers, kind of best case scenario, clumped up on the wrong side of cover. Let's see what the Polsten can do now. Don't think anybody's really going to be trying to aim for this over going for something like a Humber. It seems to have too many compromises and not enough benefits. I suppose it does have technically a little bit more health than the Humber, but not by enough, and still very weakly armored. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you'll be primarily trying to get this for anti-air. I mean, for anti-infantry based on its performance. It still looks like it's going to be largely a anti-air unit, though maybe some kind of rush or some kind of timing you could make this to work, but it doesn't look exceptional. Reveal area. Direct fire units firing from the fog of war will no longer reveal the terrain they are on. This prevents these units from being targeted by certain off-map abilities. I don't think they even really mentioned that they changed this because it didn't used to happen, and I think this was a large part of the reason why those ASC planes were so broken. Obviously they were very strong performers, but another part of it was that, you know, these units would reveal themselves in the fog of war when they had fire, and then you could just easily click on them, which wasn't the case in Code 2 either. So this is a good change, but does this mean that indirect fire units will still be targeted like this? Which I don't know. But yeah, good change. I don't know why they made it work like this in the first place, because it's just too easy for off maps. So this anti-tank gun in the fog of war, you can see it. Reveals similar to how it did in Code 2, but doesn't disappear the fog from this area, so I can't target this with an off-map artillery strike, which was just making it too easy to counter these team weapons, especially with those ASC strafes. And maybe indirect fire didn't have this issue all along, but indirect fire, it does not get revealed in the fog, or like doesn't get a patch of fog disappeared from this area so you could target them. Maybe this was never an issue. Strafing runs, the P47 and JU87. Suppression will now only be applied to units hit by the area of effect damage, not spread to units outside its radius. So I guess they're removing the AoE suppression from these strafing runs, make them quite a lot less powerful in terms of suppression. The Vickers heavy machine gun focus gunnery ability, it's Vet 1. The accuracy has been increased a little bit close range. Well, I mean, that's close to 1 anyway, but a lot long range. So this should mean that it will do way more damage against infantry, but its suppression has been reduced, which I think it already reduced it, but now it's reduced it even more to quite a lot lower. I guess this will be enough to like keep units suppressed if they're already suppressed, but maybe not suppress them too well, especially if they're in light cover. Okay, so having a look at the focus gunnery ability, you can see the Vickers arc at this stage nice and wide, similar to, you know, MG42 and whatnot. Let's pop it. Now the cone narrows up. Doesn't seem to be any delay before it starts firing. And that's doing some really big damage. Slow to suppress, but did a lot of damage before they got suppressed. Suppression obviously gives them a big received accuracy boost. ability lasts for quite a long time as well.
Infantry squad destroyed! Reload!
It's a full minute it lasts for.
MG deploying under fire!
And doesn't get cancelled when you relocate either. With some of these abilities though, you know, I often wonder if, like, would it be better to be able to cancel them once you have them active? Because there are quite a few abilities in this game that give you some pretty big penalties that you would like to disengage from. Maybe this would be one of them. Like, okay, you activate it, you kill a unit, you get it down to like half health, it retreats. And then you've got your machine gun kind of with a narrow arc, unable to suppress effectively for another like 40 seconds or so, you know? So I wonder if they could maybe add some kind of deactivate option to some of these vet abilities that have big penalties applied to them as well. Elsewhere in the video, they did mention that you can now activate your abilities inside the building, but if you just straight up select the building, it's not there. You have to press tab or click down here to specifically select the machine gun, and then you can activate it. And look at that, doesn't change the machine gun's arc. So the focus gunnery gonna be a bit of a weapon inside buildings, I think. Maybe not so good outside of buildings with the very narrow arcs and whatnot, but inside a building this will kill fast, with no penalties, and I think it gives her like a slight range boost as well. So yeah, it seems like more of a building oriented ability. M3 Stuart penetration reduced from 120 80 far to 80 near 50 far, so this is going to make it way worse against medium tanks, things like the Panzer IV. The Stuart's going to be significantly worse in those situations. I know that Stuart spam was picking up a bit of momentum with the repair boost that it got in the previous patch. So yeah, I think this is done to kind of nip that in the bud. But I think, you know, a large part of that was also because you could go for Stuart into Crusaders, which were broken, into Churchills, which, you know, you just never have to tick, so saving a lot of resources. You know, but we'll see how it goes. It'll probably still be worth getting, but only one. And then you have to pay for the side tech to just get one because the side tech's so expensive. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Its recon scan has been changed from a timed ability to a toggle ability. Remains active while the vehicle is moving and reduces move speed by 50% and disables weapons while active. Here is the Stuart's new recon scan ability. I've got a standard Stuart in the background. Upgraded Stuart down here. Needs the tank commander upgrade to use this ability.
Yeah, if you insist.
Quite a lot of sight there. What's that, 50, 60, 70 sight range?
Take your stations, we're heading out. Heading to our destination now.
Okay, that's pretty good. And you can move around with it while active. Kind of reminds me of the IR Searchlight, how it ended up in Code 2 in terms of vision. They might have had 80 vision, but obviously this is a lot more durable as multifunctional, so that's pretty good. I think previously the issue I had was you had to activate this while stationary, and quite often I'd hit stop and then try activate it, but then with the deceleration or deactivate straight away, made it quite cumbersome to use. But now with this is really strong. It's one of the best vision tools Brits have, and we've already got a lot of good ones with the recce section and the flares and whatnot, so yeah, it's really, really good. And the M3 Grant coaxial machine gun now properly tracks targets. Nice to see. Wehrmacht, the 221 armoured car. The 20mm Panzerbuchse now deals very limited area of effect damage, primarily to detonate objects like mines. But have a look at these values, they are tiny. 0.5 max AoE, so really small. I doubt it could even hit 2 models. And on top of that, it's only 12 damage. So yeah, don't rely on its main gun to be doing anything against infantry. But some other changes, we've got the white phosphorus round no longer overlapping with the scout awareness ability. I'm guessing this is like a hotkey fix. Nice to see. And the white phosphorus round is now available without veterancy to the Panzerbuchse variant. Having a look at the 221, first off with the radio antenna upgrade, you can see this one still goes out to 90 range. A lot of these other similar abilities got nerfed down to 60 range, but the 221 still up to 90, which, you know, it's a bit more of a specialized unit. You have to specifically go for the upgrade to get it, so it is stronger than the others. And then over here we have the one with the Panzerbuchse upgrade. White phosphorus round, cannot use it to target infantry, so you don't rely on it against infantry. And now having a look at the white phosphorus round against a tank, one of the things that specifically makes it quite good on the 221 is the 221 has quite a lot of sight, right? So you can activate this ability from beyond the enemy's vision. They've got 35 sight range, you've got 45, I think. So you can activate this, they can't see you. So it allows you to get this off like nice and early. And it still does the regular 120 damage, disables the enemy's weapons, which sometimes these phosphorus don't, sometimes they're more of just a blind and speed reduction, but this one does disable weapons as well. So yeah, kind of allows this vehicle to scale a bit better up against medium tanks. It still gives you quite a lot of utility, and like as an isolated unit without support, this really makes it a lot more viable to use this white phosphorus round, especially because you're probably going to be getting the first strike in. So if their vehicle is not supported, you're going to win. So it really helps this thing out. Make sure you have munitions to use this ability because it is very good. Breakthrough incendiary bombing run. Munitions cost reduced from 120 to 100, small buff, and now it arrives sooner and drops the bombs off sooner. Now it takes 8 to 9 seconds for the bombs to impact the target area. Hopefully this is maybe my influence on this, since I did a lot of like timing testing in my previous videos, and now we're getting to see the benefits of that. Incendiary bombing run, not going to be so slow anymore. The Flak 36 anti-tank emplacement, health increased from 800 to 1040. Basically never see this anymore, so sure. Kettenkrad reconnaissance vehicle. Reconnaissance scan changed from a timed ability to a toggle ability that remains active while moving, speed reduced by 50%. Similar changes to what the Stuart got. Having a look at the revised reconnaissance scan now for the Kettenkrad. You can see default sight is not actually that impressive considering it's called a recon vehicle. It's not even 40 sight, maybe it's like 38 sight, barely more sight than a regular unit. But we put the recon scan on, and boom. So that is 50, 60, 75. So even more sight than the Stuart, 5 more sight.
Eager to get moving. Proceeding to new
Still
coordinates.
reasonably fast. I could definitely see this being really popular now. Maybe in like team games. If you want to scout out your opponent's weapon team positions, this would be super valuable. So I could even see you like reconstructing this in the late game, because the Kettenkrad is not that expensive to build in this version. You don't need vet for it either. You can just get it straight away. So yeah, that is really powerful. The Luftwaffe strafing run, recharge time increased from 60 to 90 seconds. All right. Luftwaffe fragmentation bombs, recharge time increased from 60 to 120 seconds. Probably sensible. I think a lot of these abilities, specifically in team games where maybe you've got some caches down, you're flooded with munitions, you kind of just spam these abilities out, made it very difficult to like cap victory points in the late game. So I think adding some recharge times to these makes a lot of sense. Stosstruppen, their STG upgrade is getting an overhaul, which is available in the mechanized battle group, and previous to this was terrible. A complete noob trap, waste of resources, awful. You were pretty much better off in just about every case sticking with the standard Stosstruppen weapons. But now it's got an accuracy increase right across the ranges, near to far, big accuracy increases, big DPS increases that should be. And then the burst duration, mid and far, big increases to the bursts, so much more mid and far DPS. And on top of that, it's getting a cost decrease. So it should be pretty good now. Having a look at the DPS curves on co3stats.com, and they have this really nice functionality where you can look at the older versions. So in the red, we've got the old version, and in the blue, we've got the new version, and you can see pretty big damage increase right across the range. Up close, we're getting about 8 more DPS, and then at far, you don't really want to be fighting at far, but still, more than double. We can now compare it to their regular setup. You can see you have way more damage up close, up to, what's this, 7 range. You have not too far off double the DPS of the regular Stosstruppen setup, so that's pretty good. But then, yeah, once you get to, what's this, about 14, 15 range, that's when the regular setup starts to take over, much more proficient long range. And I imagine like as you drop in model counts as well. Now you can see the MG42 is just such a beast, like better than the MP44 at all ranges. So yeah, I don't know, maybe still not that appealing of an upgrade because it does give you a lot of firepower like right at the start in close range, but quite often hard to set up engagements in close range. Because yeah, once you, 2 models, you only have a very narrow victory with the MP44s. With this tool as well, you can add in light cover in case they've got any like cover bonuses. But I don't think either of these weapons do that. Curve looks pretty much identical. Still crossover points roughly the same spot. Still just about twice DPS up close. So yeah, it doesn't seem like these MP44s have any bonuses against cover that I'm aware of at least. Then you can also add in their moving performance. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so now it is more than double. So yeah, the STGs do have less of a penalty firing on the move. So, yeah, more than double the DPS. And the crossover points now around 18 range instead of 15. And again, like not quite so big of a gap long range. So yeah, STGs or MP44s, they're much better in moving as well. But yeah, I don't know. In terms of like, you know, when it comes to model drops, you'll start to drop your DPS quite sharply as you start to lose models, which is not really the case with this Stosstruppen. And again, they're such an expensive squad. Kind of hard to use them in close quarters like this. You've already kind of got Panzerbuchse to fill that kind of role. So I don't know, maybe this upgrade needs something else. The Wehrmacht 8-Rad signal detection range reduced from 90 to 60, which is not a huge range. I think a lot of people were more asking for like this to be an activated ability or maybe cost munitions rather than just receive such a severe range nerf. You know, 60 will still be useful, but yeah, it's the same range as an anti-tank gun. It'll, you know, you're playing with fire. You'll still get some value out of this, but yeah, it's a pretty big nerf. The Wepse self-propelled gun is getting quite a lot of buffs. First off, its barrage ready aim time is going down by a significant amount. So this should mean less delay between you activating the barrage and the shell actually coming out to start the barrage, which is very good. It's also getting a cost reduction, pretty significant. 80 less manpower, 20 less fuel. I mean, you could even consider rushing a Wepse. I'll probably try it out at some stage. But typically on the other side, you know, you'll go down the other side of the battle group first, and then you go over to the Wepse later on. So that's where you'll feel the manpower reduction most of all. And then the creeping barrage has got some changes. First off, range reduction to match its standard barrage. The creeping barrage recharge time has been reduced as well. I think this is matching the buff that the regular barrage on the Wepse got in a previous patch. I think the creeping barrage was kind of left out from those changes, so now it's been standardized, I believe. And fixed several issues where the creeping barrage damage was different to the regular barrage. I wasn't actually aware of that. Here is the Wepse creeping barrage ability. It doesn't cost any munitions compared to the regular barrage, so you don't have to worry about that. You can see from the targeting, very small creep on it. Very, very tiny. And I believe the Wepse has a 3 model damage cap compared to the BL 5.5, which is 4. Which does make it significantly worse. Especially against team weapons, where there's a bit of a bug going on with team weapons at this stage. Where sometimes you can only damage 2 models of the team weapon, and then the third piece of damage goes into the weapon itself, and the weapon itself is invulnerable until it gets decrewed. So you're kind of wasting like a third of your damage. So, you know, usually I think creeping barrage, you kind of want to use this against support weapons since they have a pack-up time. They're a bit slower getting out of there. But you can see that's a very slow creep. It's not, you know, they're going to be able to dodge away from this very quickly, even if they have to dodge back through it. Creep is so slow at advancing, it's not really going to target much. So I'm having trouble thinking like what I would actually want to use this on, and maybe like a 17 pounder is just about the only thing I could think of. Something like that. Because yeah, it's a very, very slow creep. We'll maybe do it again here. So you can see the pattern a bit more apparently about units. One shell there. The next shell should be about here. And the next shell a bit over here. And over here. You see a very, very slow rate to this creep. But, you know, a reasonably good scatter on it. You can, you know, get quite good with targeting it and knowing exactly where the first shell's going to land. Not quite to the extent that you could with the Priest and Code 2, but still pretty reasonable. No, this is, of course, with no fog as well, so no less fog scatter penalties. But, yeah, that's a quick look at the Wepse's creeping barrage. On to the US forces, and we've got the Chaffee. It's having its penetration reduced slightly mid and far ranges. I think, you know, Chaffee spam was a pretty viable strategy if you went for US forces armored, and it would scale very well against medium tanks because the penetration on the Chaffee was so high and the Chaffee so fast as well. So now it's having its pen reduced slightly. You know, it'll still be good, but just in the head-to-head against a medium tank, it's not going to be quite so potent from long range. Still, you know, if you get up to point blank, you'll be pretty much guaranteed to pin, or if you use the Chaffee to, you know, its superior mobility to flank around, you'll still have very good penetration chances. But in the head-to-head, the Chaffee's not going to be scaling so well against mediums, which I think is a good idea. The Engineer lighted up vet ability. Didn't really see too much play previous to this because, you know, most players wanted the superior fieldcraft. They wanted the faster repair rates. So it's being made slightly more appealing now. It's getting more area and the damage has been increased and no longer has a cooldown between bursts. This will be way more potent now. Here we're taking a look at the lighted up ability, and remember, you do not need the flamethrower upgrade to use this. If you have the flamethrower, it's free, but if you don't, it costs 30 munitions. So, you know, you got the sweeper, it could still be like a decent anti-garrison tool. Try it against this unit clumped up in a light cover. So no, you know, they're very clumped up, but they're not taking any like debuffs or penalties. So it's just like a constant stream of damage.
Where's our fucking support?
Not as big of an area as I thought. I thought I targeted it like this. So maybe the targeting is a little bit unreliable. Targeting it right here on these 5 models, right in the center of them.
Us? Now?
This time it's getting much better spread. So maybe it depends a little bit on where your unit's standing or what angle they're at.
Combat engineers!
But yeah, seems you know, seems pretty potent to maybe give you an extra option for anti-garrison tools, so you do have to get to Vet 1 to use it, which can be a little bit challenging without the flamethrower in the first place. The M31 US recovery vehicle. Fuel cost has been reduced by 15 and will now self-repair when out of combat. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Oftentimes you want this instead of an engineer. So, you know, if it took damage, you'd have to build an engineer to repair it up, which could be awkward. It means you can't really recover units that are on the map safely or wrecks that are on the map safely because it'll be low health. So, sure, these are very difficult units to balance because, you know, if you get a wreck right next to your base, you can safely repair it up. You can get some really great value out of it. But if the wreck's in the center of the map, it takes so long to recover and then repair it up because, you know, once you've recovered it, it's still like extremely low health, needs repairing. And finally, the whiz-bang for US forces. It's getting a damage reduction against emplacements and it's getting a 5 range increase. All right, on to Africa Corps, and we're starting out with the 250/9 20mm half-track. So this is the one you get from going for the combat half-tracks upgrade from the armory, then upgrading it on the half-track. I recently did a build order guide on it, and while they had the bug rate of fire, it did actually feel viable as a tactic, so I'm interested to see how they've changed this to make this unit viable, because previous to this, they were trash. So first off, the autocannon accuracy has been increased by 33% at all ranges. Pretty big buff there. The area of effect damage set to 4 with no drop-off, and the area of effect now capped to 2 models. Now deals area effect damage in a radius of 1.25. So yeah, didn't used to have AoE damage, which is kind of strange. Similar changes overall here to the Polsten from the Brits in this patch that we saw earlier. And then also getting a nerf to its machine gun accuracy by 33% at all ranges. So yeah, relying more on the autocannon, less on the machine guns now, which is interesting. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right, let's see how the 250/9 does against these riflemen at 20 range away. Did do the 8 rad earlier today, so we've got a nice point of comparison. The Polsten as well. So, yeah, this is up against a unit out in the open. It's not really going to have a chance to flex its AoE muscles too much. Side of shots that scatter, like, slightly off target, will still hit the intended model. I wasn't paying attention to how fast that was. Doesn't seem particularly impressive, but these things can hit the field really fast, like around 4-minute marks, so they can't be too potent. And then up against a unit that's clumped in light cover. Okay, you can see a couple AoE hits there. So if the models are right tight space next to each other, you can get some AoE damage, so it's going to be good against these units that are in position and cover, if they're on the wrong side of cover especially. Alright, I mean it's probably fine for how early they arrive. Basiglieri are having their reinforcement cost reduced from 28 to 26. I think this kind of makes sense. For me, Basiglieri weren't really worth getting anymore. Just, yeah, woefully underperforming compared to riflemen especially, and even against Brits at the moment, a bit of a struggle. So yeah, good to see their long-term manpower drain going to be less taxing. The Canone howitzer is getting its shells per barrage increased from 4 to 6. Okay, well that actually makes it quite appealing because it does fire off its shells faster than the BL 5.5. So I think this is probably going to make the Canone quite good. Still quite expensive though, because it comes with that truck to kind of tow it around. I think it kind of adds to the cost of the Canone, makes it a bit harder to afford. But yeah, that's going to be quite potent with 6 shells per barrage. The FAMO recovery vehicle is having its fuel cost reduced from 40 to 30, similar to the US recovery vehicle we saw earlier. The Panzerjäger squad health increased from 85 to 90, and reinforcement costs decreased from 28 to 26. Didn't really feel like the Panzerjägers needed a buff that much because they are heavily used. They need to be able to construct them outside of their half-track system, I think is what most players are asking for. But maybe this is kind of bringing Panzerjägers more in line with the US Forces bazooka squads, will make them less susceptible to just getting blasted out by like a Greyhound with the extra bit of health. So yeah, okay, that's fine. The Armored Support Battle Group vehicle awareness range reduced from 160 to 60, same as the Wehrmacht 8 rad that we saw earlier. Yeah, I mean, this ability was mega broken, but I do still worry, like with these changes, not much really to help Afrika Korps become viable again. You know, it's in 1v1, high level 1v1 is what I'm talking about here. I think they are quite viable still in team games with pretty good win rates, but in the high level 1v1s, not Afrika Korps seen in like any tournaments, it's not a good look, and I don't think any of the changes in this patch have really pushed them over the edge back into a good position again, especially with the 8 rad going to have the bugged autocannon reverted again. So I think 8, it's not going to be pretty for Afrika Korps in high level 1s. And let's have a look at these bug fixes. Units with no anti-air capabilities no longer acquire airplanes as targets. Man, what a silly bug this was, especially during the supreme ASC days. And, you know, planes in general are very popular at the moment. So, yeah, this was very irritating. Good to see that's finally been addressed. Engineering units no longer take extra damage while repairing a Vet 3 as intended. Pretty hard to get into Vet 3 in the first place, so good to see that that finally works. Compromise armor did not properly apply to targets. I think this is the ability on the PAC 38 for Afrika Korps, their anti-tank gun, wasn't working properly. Now should be. Very good to see, because that anti-tank gun a little bit under strength without that ability working properly. Fixed an issue where some bombing runs reticle was inaccurate. So yeah, like where the UI would show you where the bombs would land versus where they actually landed was incorrect. Good to see that's been addressed also. They fixed the MG34 heavy weapon team where they got a speed boost when using the fire discipline ability. So yeah, I actually had somebody use this against me multiple times throughout a match. Looked quite comical, but yeah, good to see they are finally shutting down that abuse. Moved base bunkers to remove the ability to shoot resource points on some maps. Good to see. I think especially on like the 1v1 version of Pacino, this would be a bit of an issue previously. So good to see that's been addressed. Burst fire weapons no longer interrupt the current burst if the target is out of fire cone angles. This one is a bit confusing to me. You would think that, you know, if mid-burst a unit gets outside of your fire cone angle, that you would have your burst interrupted. But this seems to suggest the opposite. It'll just continue the burst until the burst finishes and then you won't shoot at them anymore. Yeah, I don't know what this means, so this is a confusing change to me. So the main offender for these burst shenanigans has been the US Forces 4x4 truck, and we've got a 221 here. I'll target that. So you can see this is pretty much its max range if you're right clicking. Before that it wouldn't be able to target. And now see bunny hopping as well. Not very smooth as it's reversing, but yeah. Still targeting well outside its burst length. Like outside its maximum range.
Wait a second.
Not omnidirectional anymore though. Used to be able to target way outside, like be able to shoot backwards. So it looks like that has been fixed at least. But in terms of leaving the burst in a straight direction while it's still on the cone, it will still continue firing, which I feel is not how it should be. MG34 fire discipline and Vickers plunging fire. What is plunging fire? Isn't focus gunnery the Vickers V1 ability? I don't know what this is. Can now be used in garrisons. Well, good to see you can use those MG abilities in garrisons. Overdue. Team weapons and emplacements will now grant shared experience to units that can receive it. Nice. The CMP anti-air truck now properly deals area of effect damage in a radius of 3. Okay, probably covered in those changes earlier. Fixed an issue where the 8-Rad 250/9 half-track and the Crusader anti-air were firing the autocannons faster than intended. We saw that earlier in the notes. I think the flak failing also had a bug rate of fire, which didn't get mentioned here. Improved the hitbox of dropped weapons to make them easy to pick up. Very good change. They were way too hard to click on previously. And adjusted the selection box of the recoilless gun. Nice. Oh, the LG40 now properly camouflages when its V1 ability is used. Good to get some more utility on that. And then remove the wrong decorator from the tactical map for the LG40. Okay, nice little UI change there. So we're back on code3stats.com, and just recently they added a bunch of statistics so we can look at all the different win rates for the various factions. So at the moment we're looking at the previous patch 1.2.2, which lasted for about 3 weeks-ish, and you can see in 1v1 win rates actually pretty close, and US forces surprisingly low, which is interesting to me. I think they are, in my opinion, at least US forces armored, by far the strongest at this stage and didn't really get nerfed. So that's interesting. Brits are actually quite high, but maybe this could be explained by Crusaders with the bug rate of fire and the Stuart spam, which did get nerfed a bit. But yeah, overall, very tight balance in 1v1, which is surprising because for me, how it feels, US forces the dominant, and US forces as well seem to have more options open to them. They've got a lot more options. Their plan B, C, D, E, much stronger than the others, where the other factions may be a bit of a one trick. Might have one strategy that can kind of compete, but everything else not so good. So yeah, this was a little bit surprising to me. We can see since this patch though, US forces getting a bit worse. So did Brits, maybe explained by the Crusaders going down. This is only a few days worth of games. And then still maintained a very tight balance. But if we have a look in 4v4s now, Now, not quite as good. Brits dominant. I would imagine Indian artillery being the main culprit here. The BL 5.5s, pretty good. Pretty hard to counter, especially if they get put in the base. So I imagine this is really boosting up the performance of Brits in the team games. And you can see the Axis both struggling. Whereas if we have a look at this patch, maybe the gap's widened a little bit. Not enough games here to really be statistically valid. So the game's balanced in terms of win rates. Not too bad at this stage, though. You know, in terms of diversity, maybe not quite equal between all factions. Maybe some of these factions more tunneled into one specific build in these various modes. Don't have as many options as some of the others. Fortunately, at the moment, no ELO option can't limit this. I think on the previous version, we could go like top 200 only, so we could see how it was working at the higher stages of the meta. But yeah, that's a look at the win rates. So it looks like some work to do, mainly in the team games for the Axis. They do seem to be struggling a bit in that department. But yeah, overall, not too bad. For me, you know, I like to play a very wide array of strategies. So I like to have a lot of options open. And this patch didn't really do too much in that department. Still, I think the US Forces Riflemen with Armored, just king. So strong. But yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this balance patch, and I'll catch you in the next one. And if you enjoy my patch breakdowns, I hope you consider coming on board as a Patreon backer.